Stenciled cards don't have to be just blocks of color. In this card making tutorial, I'll share a few techniques and details to amplify your stenciled card designs. Hi there everyone, it's Jaycee, welcome back to my channel. The stenciled sets I'm using for this card making tutorial come from Altenew's June 2023 Marvelous Monthly release. Make sure you check out the full collection in the description box, as well as what my crafty friends have made. The first set I'm using for my stenciled cards is the June 2023 Dynamic Duo Hanging Houseplants. The modern colored blocked stenciled houseplant layers are a perfect backdrop to any sentiment and for any recipient. To begin this card, I'm using the sticky mat grid from my stamp wheel and applying my main panel of white cardstock. I'm starting with the number 1 stencil to color in the E pot layer. I think that the Summer Afternoon Caramel Toffee and Paperback inks from Altenew are the perfect terracotta pot color. I'm using both of these inks to create a rough planter. Throughout this video, I'll be using these mini ink blending brushes. I have several of these sets of 4 to cover all the ink families, so I don't have to clean my brushes between layers. Typically with stencils, you go in numerical order, following a gradient of inks. What I love about this Hanging Houseplants Dynamic Duo is I can start with any layer and start with any ink value. So I'm starting with A3, so I can get my stems and foliage centered in the terracotta pot. And regardless of which layer I start with, the etching in the stencil makes lining up the previous layer foolproof. So with Green Meadow's crisp dye ink set, I'm starting again with the A3 layer and Minty Mint. A4 in Sweet Leaf. A2 in Just Green. And finally A1 in Hunter Green. For this next grouping, I'm overlaying the D and B4 layer, just to get an idea of the spatial arrangement of this next potted plant. And for all the pots, I'm using Summer Afternoon again, but this time I'm using the Tropical Forest Crisp Dye ink set to color this grouping of leaves in the B layers. Then for the smallest potted plant, I'm using Green Valley Crisp Dye ink to color this group. Now you can add the macrame pots hangers from the stamp set half of this Dynamic Duo, and this would still be a beautiful card, but I'm going to personalize this card and add details similar to other houseplants. In the Islands of Fiji dual-tipped pens, I'll use a few colors to add whimsical details, starting with fuchsia, to add bright outlines to the leaves similar to an aglaonema. These are just simple lines and dots I'm adding, nothing fancy. Then for this lower right plant, I'm adding some striations similar to a watermelon peperomia. Then finally for this top right plant, the smallest plant, I'm adding in wavy lines with a white gel pen similar to a Haworthia, Aloe, or Dracaena. So now I can add the macrame plant hanger stamps to these pots. I'm using Obsidian Pigment ink to stamp this detail layer. Then to add the hanging string, I used a fine liner pen in 02 just to make sure my lines are absolutely vertical. I finished this card with a sentiment and some jet black ink spray splatters, and with a few lines and dots, we personalized this Hanging Houseplants stenciled card. For this card, I'm going with a more elegant approach, but creating this card is going to be just as simple as the previous one. Noon for the June 2023 Marvelous Monthly series from Altenew is the Build a Garden Japanese Anemone. Off camera, I already gold heat embossed the outline stamp in Brutus Monroe Gilded. This is my go-to gold embossing powder. Then using this sticky mat from my stamp wheel, I'll begin layering and coloring this anemone cluster. I am modeling this card after a Japanese anemone cultivar I have in my garden called Honorine Jobert. I love the pillowy white blossoms against deep green leaves. I'm applying a very light layer of Morning Frost from Warm Gray Crisp dye ink only to the center of the base layer stencil. Stencil number 1 and 2 have the solid petal images, and once I see the ink build up on the paper, I stop applying ink as to preserve the velvet white petals. On stencil layer 3, I'm applying Evening Gray only to the very center of the flower image. Again, once I see I have the slightest hint of ink on the cardstock, I stop applying additional ink. This is the result of very light layers of ink. You can always add more, but I saved myself by applying much less ink for soft details. To fill in the centers of the anemones, leaves, buds, and stems, I'm using a mix of 2 ink families. First, I'm using Evergreen from Greenfield's Crisp dye ink to apply the base layer for the leaves, stems, and buds. For the flower anthers, I'm using Raw Amber from Jewel Tone's Crisp dye ink set. To the detail layers of the greenery, I'm using Green Onyx to deepen the leaves even more. Then for the very center of the flower, I'm using Forest Glades from Greenfields. Coloring these Japanese anemones is as simple as that, and we can amplify the flowers even more with some petal details. I have the woodless coloring pencils from Altenew, and in this set is Moonrock colored pencil. I'll use this pencil to add vein detail lines to the petals. I'm adding simple feathered strokes starting from the center of the flower outward. Just a few lines to each petal to create a little movement in the flower. Then with the coordinating die to Build a Garden Japanese Anemone, I'll cut this flower cluster out. This cluster is slightly bigger than an A2 size card front when die cut just like this. I found that by cutting this cluster in half, I can manipulate the arrangement so that I get this flowy wreath formation. In order to make these soft white petals stand out, I chose Birchwood cardstock from Altenew to be my simple background. Then for the sentiment, I picked this Hugs stamp and die from the Mini Delight Granny Squares. This is also part of the June 2023 Marvelous Monthly release. I white heat embossed this sentiment onto a scrap of gold cardstock and foam mounted the die cut to the center of the anemone arrangement. To amplify the gold details of this card, I'm adding gold pearl metallic splatters from the metallic watercolor pan set. Then after adding a few sequins, that finishes this final stenciled card featuring Build a Garden Japanese Anemone. Those are 2 simple stenciled cards with easy details for your next crafting project. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for more card making content and check out what my crafty friends are making for this video hop. All of that information is in the description box. Thank you so much for watching my video for the June 2023 Marvelous Monthly series, and I'll see you again very soon.